We have two main ways of determining wages, according at least to in a very general sense. So we have two main ways that I want us to try and understand. The first one, I think that I was able to look at last time, we said is known as the marginal productivity theory of wage determination. So marginal productivity theory. So the first one, number one, is known as the marginal productivity theory of wage determination. And the second one, after this one, is known as the modern theory. Yeah? So we have the marginal productivity theory. Then number two, we have the modern theory. Yeah? Modern theory of wage determination. Modern theory. So I want to start by explaining the first one. Yeah. So we have these two. Yeah. Sometimes you can be asked. Yeah. To maybe state the differences. Yeah. But of course, maybe that one you can try and give it as a form of assignment that you can just, I can give it like an assignment and then you can be able to try and find out. Yeah. You never know when some of these questions can come up. Okay. So I want to start by explaining the first one, the marginal productivity theory of wage determination. Hopefully with the time that we have, we can actually finish up with this topic. Imebaki tu kazi kidogo, and then we look at the last topic in microeconomics. Remember, this is the fourth topic, and then number 5 is market structures. And then after that, we begin with macroeconomics. Yeah, we'll spend significantly less time with macro than what we've done with microeconomics. So let me start by explaining what marginal productivity theory is. We'll write the following, that this theory states that, just a minute, just write this theory. Yeah, so this theory states that under perfect competition, under perfect competition, comma, under perfect competition, comma, every worker of the same skills and efficiency, every worker of the same skills and efficiency.
Excuse me?
Every worker, mfanyikazi, yeah? Every worker under perfect competition.
Excuse me, please. You can hear me?
So yeah, I'm just repeating the point again. So nimesema that this theory states
I'm
that.
saying.
Yes.
We did that.
Oh,
but maybe you can repeat for the people that are not there. Yeah, we were supposed to cover the modern theory of wage determination.
Oh, okay,
we did the marginal.
I just wanted to make sure that I can start from a general point. But if
okay.
Yes, and I think of course we also looked at the criticisms. Yeah, were we able to look at the limitations of this theory?
Yes.
So I hope it's the same for everyone. Yeah. So we have the limitations for that marginal productivity theory. Of course, we can now start from this modern theory of wage determination so that we can start looking at other things subsequently. So oh yeah, I remember saying that the last limitation here is that this theory is only under perfect competition, which does not exist. Yeah, and we will understand more of this in the next topic. Yeah, one of the market structures that we need to understand is known as perfect market competition. Yeah, so let's explain modern theory of wage determination. It states that wages are determined. It states that wages are determined by the forces of demand and supply. Wages are determined by the forces of demand and supply for the labor under consideration. For the labor under consideration. Wages are determined by the forces of demand and supply for the labor under consideration. Yeah, so just in the same way, if you think about it, yeah, if you're looking at wage as the price of labor, then it also has a supply and a demand. So you can also be at a point whereby you can develop the equilibrium through the forces of demand and supply of labor. Yeah? So that is basically what modern theory of wage determination is. Yeah, that at high wages, you get to find that you have high supply of labor compared to the demand. But at low wages, you have lower supply. Yeah? People are not willing, people are less willing to work under conditions of low wages. Yeah. Another statement, yeah, that actually this the other statement will just say that if the market faces excess demand, if the market faces excess demand for labor, if the market faces excess demand for labor, wages will be forced to increase. Wages will be forced to increase. Wages itapanda. Sasa. Wages will be forced to increase. While if the market faces excess supply, if the market faces excess supply, if the market faces excess supply, the market faces excess supply, wages will be forced to reduce. Wages will be forced to reduce. If the market faces excess supply, wages will be forced to reduce. Yeah, of course, that is true. People will be, if you have excess supply, you have many people who are working, who will be willing even to work at lower rates just to be able to have that opportunity to work. So that is the modern theory of wage determination. Yeah? As I've said, I just want to make sure that you can have something small to note as an assignment there. You can just write there, highlight the differences between, yes, compare, or the way it's usually said, compare and contrast, yeah, between modern productivity theory and modern theory of wage determination. I think if you're able to do your research very well, you can be able to find the differences between the two, yeah. So one of them, we are saying that it depends on the forces of demand and supply. The other one depends on the level of extra output, yeah, for lack of a better term, yeah. The level of extra output put in work will determine the wage rate that you get, yeah. So that is, those are two theories you can be able to think about and just be able to form some different points of view, especially on the difference, yeah. Moving on to something else, because I want to make sure I finish up with this topic today. There is a concept that I want us to talk about, yeah, especially, because now we're talking about the theory of the farm. We're trying to understand how various factors of production operate, yeah. We are now focusing on labor, yeah, to a large degree, and you're trying to understand how labor can do what, how labor can be able to engage itself to work under better terms, yeah. So for that point, we need to be able to look at trade unions, yeah. What are trade unions, yeah? And what does it mean to say that they engage in something known as collective bargaining, yeah? And why, what are the objectives of trade unions at the end of the day, yeah? For every profession, for most professions that we have in this country, we do have trade unions, yeah? In the National Union of Teachers, for example, yeah? We have we have KMPDU, yeah, that is this one for medical practitioners and all that, yeah. We have even for lecturers, yeah, for university lecturers. What is it? Just forgotten the name, yeah. But for every we have for every sector basically, we get to see that we have trade unions, and the main job of trade unions is to engage in something known as collective bargaining, yeah. You're making sure that as time moves on, the terms of work will become a bit more fair, yeah? Through collective bargaining. You go complain, you go present your grievances, yeah, as employees of a given sector or employees in general. And at the end of the day, of course, you get to have some benefits, be it in terms of maybe increased salaries, or increased benefits and all that, yeah. Benefits are of so many forms, yeah. You talk about something like even maternity leave, for example. So all of these being incorporated as part of someone's work life points to an activity that is usually campaigned for by trade unions. So I want to explain what trade unions is, And then we just have some examples there. As I've said, we have some examples here. We have Kenya National Union of Teachers, yeah, the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. We have KMPDU, yeah, KMPDU, Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. Yes, you see, we have National Union of Teaching of Nurses. I think so. I don't know if it's something like that, yeah. But for every sphere of society, you can find that there is a trade union that aims to improve the terms of whoever is in that particular sector, yeah. Tuko na contribution ama?
I think also ISPAC.
Yes, ISPAC, yeah. Yes,
ISPAC pia si ni trade
yes.
union.
Yeah, this is what does ISPAC mean? Yeah, International, sorry, Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. Yeah, we can classify this as I think it's
Yeah.
any union or association of people within the same sector. Yeah, even for matatus, I think even for matatus we have a trade union as well. Yeah, so I just want to explain what they are, and then we look at that action known as collective bargaining in a bit more detail. Yeah. So explain trade union. Say that this is an association of workers. This is an association of workers whose main aim, an association of workers whose main aim is to protect its members. Whose main aim is to protect its members through collective bargaining. Through collective bargaining. Through collective bargaining. So since we are talking about this action of trade bargaining, collective bargaining, of course, we need to be able to understand some of the main objectives of trade unions, because trade unions have a very big role to play in an economy and in country.
The modern theory didn't have
yes
limitation.
Yes.
The modern theory didn't have a limitation.
Yeah, that one doesn't have a limitation. Does okay? Let me say that I don't have a limitation in my immediate sense here. Yeah? But once again, yeah, that's a very good way of thinking about it. Yeah, I hope you can find the time, of course, to form some of these limitations, because of course there are limitations, and I don't have them in the immediate sense. So go look for them. Yeah, of course. Remember, it will be for your benefit. Yeah, so think about the limitations of these items. Yeah. And then of course, when nilikuwa nimesema, you can just form a basis of differentiating between the two. Yeah. What are the differences between marginal productivity theory and modern theory of wage determination? Okay. So let me just continue. The next thing is for us to look at the objectives of trade unions. Objectives of trade unions. Objective number one. Objectives of trade unions. Objective number one. To ensure the security and safety of workers. To ensure the security and safety of workers. To ensure the security and safety of workers through better working conditions. Through better working conditions. And so to ensure the security of workers, security and safety of workers, yeah, through better working conditions. Through better working conditions, that's the first objective. The second objective is to obtain better economic returns and incomes. 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 That is number two, yeah. A third one, to protect the jobs of workers. protect the jobs of workers against protect the jobs of workers against retrenchment, retrenchment and layoffs. Protect the jobs of workers against retrenchment and layoffs. Okay. Another one could be which one? Another one could be that was number 4. Yeah, number three, to protect the jobs of workers against retrenchment and layoffs. The fourth one, number 4, let's make sure we have about 5. Number 4, to ensure better opportunities for training and promotion. To ensure better opportunities for training and promotion. To ensure better opportunities for training and promotion. Of course, yeah, as you work more and more in a particular sector, you need to be able to have an opportunity to maybe go up the ranks, yeah, through promotion and all that, yeah. So, to ensure better opportunities for promotion, for training and promotion. And then the last one, to provide, number 5, yeah, to provide legal assistance for workers. Legal assistance for workers. Legal assistance for workers in case of disputes, in case of work disputes, in case of work disputes, in case of work disputes or payment of wages. In case of work disputes or payment of wages. Work disputes or payment of wages. So to provide legal assistance to workers in case of disputes or in case of work disputes and payment of wages. So whenever we have disputes, whenever in case of instances such as work related issues, maybe you have been dismissed unfairly and all that, or payment of wages, you want to negotiate for better terms, then trade unions to some extent can actually provide you with legal assistance to work through that issue. Okay, that is trade unions in a nutshell. Nataka niangalie this thing known as collective bargaining in a bit more detail. Collective bargaining. Collective bargaining. What is collective bargaining? Collective bargaining. What is collective bargaining? Now, of course, just to put it in a very simple way, yeah, the ability of trade unions to go to the table with employers, yeah, to be able to complain about one or two issues. That is exactly what, so that they, at the end of the day, they can be heard and something can be done about those issues. That is exactly what collective bargaining is, yeah. So I want to be able to explain it just in one statement, and then we be able to look at some of the reasons as to why trade unions, as much as we're saying we have trade unions in our economy, they're not very effective per se because of one or two issues, and I'd also like to just address of that, yeah. So let's just explain what collective bargaining is first. So that this refers to the process whereby representatives of trade unions negotiate. Representatives of trade unions negotiate for better terms of work. Negotiate for better terms of work with employers. Let me repeat that. This refers to the process whereby representatives of trade unions negotiate for better terms of work with employers in a given industry. With employers in a given industry. So, Yeah, so this is basically it. Yeah, that negotiation, the ability to go to the table. Yeah, if these unions are able to sit with the government, yeah, to chart out the way forward in how some issues will be dealt with. Yeah, like I think for this one, this is the most recent one that I've seen. Yeah, this one that was there was a strike. Yeah, they were basically trying to make sure that something is heard of. Yeah, concerning the plight. Yeah, maybe concerning, I think it was about the fact that maybe even students who finish what? Who finish university at least are able to be guaranteed some kind of internship, because I think for the medical field it's very important for you to be interned. And then at the end of the day, you find that after you've finished that university, after 6 or so years, you're not getting that opportunity. And I think that is what they were trying to complain about. So you see, you are trying to you're trying to force the hand of the government so that they're able to negotiate and just be able to address some of those issues. Yeah. Now, just back to trade unions as we start to finish up with this, we have to understand that as much as it seems to be very ideal on how trade unions operate, yeah, like the way trade unions are operating, it seems to be very ideal. Of course, we have some compromising factors. We have some factors which, or reasons as to why trade unions do not operate very successfully, especially in developing countries such as ours. Yeah, I think some of them are very obvious. Yeah? If you're talking about political interference, yeah, you find that if you're talking about especially political interference, yeah, you find that if you're trying to get into the negotiating table with the government, and the union itself is on the side of the government, then it is only the employee, or it is only the worker who will suffer at the end of the day. Yeah? So I want to start by just having there some topic, just after this collective bargaining, but still on trade unions, reasons why trade unions are not successful. Reasons why trade unions are not successful in developing countries. Reasons why trade unions are not successful in developing countries. Reasons why trade unions are not successful in developing countries. We have some of them as being very obvious, by the way. Yeah? If you look at the structure of a trade union, the strength of a trade union to a very great extent depends on the number of workers in this particular sector. Yeah? The number of teachers, the number of doctors and all the dentists, yeah? The number of nurses, yeah? The number of professions in the accounting sector. Yeah? So if you're talking about high levels of unemployment as the first reason, so A, high unemployment level. So the first one, A, is high unemployment level. And you find that even for that sector, you might want to go complain on some issues, but strength in numbers is a very important factor. So because of high unemployment, people are not employed, especially in some of these particular sectors. So the first reason is high unemployment level. A second reason, lack of cooperation from members. If you're talking about you guys being members, but especially in something like the education sector, yeah, you find that if you're deciding to maybe organize a strike, just not saying it's good or bad, yeah, but if you have a strike and then you find that in this strike, it's only like half strength, because some of the teachers, for example, are still teaching, while some of them are out here, trying to bargain for better terms of work. Then lack of cooperation is a very serious issue. Lack of cooperation from members. Okay. That was a second reason. But C, a third one, C, lack of adequate funds. I hope I'm not going too fast, yeah. So the second one, of course, nimesema hapo, lack of cooperation from members. The third one, C, lack of adequate funds. Lack of adequate funds to pay to compensate members while on strike. Yes. Lack of adequate funds to compensate members while on strike. Lack of adequate funds to compensate members while on strike. Now, of course, another obvious reason is that they are poorly organized. This is number 4. They are poorly organized. They are poorly organized. It's a very, very serious reason. You remember what I talked about? Yeah, I talked about the fact that you find sometimes that, even the union itself, in the fact that it's supposed to bargain for better terms of work, it is actually on the side of the government. Yeah? It is sitting on the side of the government, and it is basically trying to play the devil's advocate, yeah, in convincing workers to go to work and, even sometimes unfair terms, yeah. So nimesema they are poorly organized. 2 more reasons. Another one, tutasema that they face corruption and mismanagement. That is trade unions, yeah. They face corruption and mismanagement. So that they face corruption and mismanagement. The last reason, that there is a lot of political interference. The last reason, yeah, a lot of political interference in the running of trade unions. A lot of political interference in the running of trade unions. So that is it in as far as some of the reasons, and this is also a very common question, yeah. We find that for trade unions, the way they operate is highly compromised, yeah, either directly or indirectly, especially by the government, yeah, because most of these unions especially aim to bargain against government actions, yeah, more than any other sector out there. Yeah. I don't know how the private sector perceives of it, but we need to be able to understand these concepts very well, yeah, especially to be able to answer such questions, yeah. Okay, now another definition that we need to be able to understand focuses, we are still talking about wage here, yeah? We're still talking about the ability of firms to pay wages, yeah? So if you're talking about firms and being able to pay wages, you have to understand, and this is something that is more or less like a very controversial issue. You find that it is now becoming a common occurrence that different people in different sectors are now trying to force something known as a minimum wage, yeah? What is this thing known as a minimum wage, yeah? What does it mean for a certain employee or a given union to say that our employees in this sector will not agree or should work, yeah? They should work for a minimum of Kenya shillings, this and this per month, for example, yeah? So I want us to look at this thing known as minimum wage legislation. Minimum wage legislation. I want us to just explain it and then we look at something concerning minimum wage legislation. What are the objectives of minimum wage legislation at the end of the day? What does it aim to achieve? Because at the very edge, at the very lowest level, by the way, yeah, you need to be able to afford, even at any sector that you work for, yeah, you need to be able, I think I'm just talking about the ideal sense, yeah. You need to be able to have some, decent income to be able to afford goods and services, and that is the most basic goods and services without any unnecessary strain. So I want to explain what minimum wage legislation is, and we just get to look at some objectives because this is a very controversial and a very common issue to also think about, yeah. So let's explain minimum wage legislation with a statement first, and then we look at the objectives of minimum wage legislation. Just with a simple statement, tasema that this is the lowest remuneration. This is the lowest remuneration that employees, that employers can legally legally pay their employees. Yeah? Minimum wage is the lowest remuneration that employers can legally pay. Why am I saying play? Can legally pay their employees. Full stop. So this is the lowest remuneration that employers can legally pay their employees. Full stop. Just another statement on further understanding of this thing. Yeah, utasema that it is a price floor. Remember demand and supply. Yeah, it is a price floor. It is a price floor. It is a price floor below which employees. It is a price floor below which employees may not sell their labor. It is a price floor below which employees may not sell their labor. Yeah, and as of course, as I've said, yeah, it is something that is there by law. Yeah, so it is a price floor below which employees may not sell their labor. Yeah, that is a very important factor to actually think about. Yeah, so forgiven, and this is something that has become more of a common occurrence. And we know in the past, really, because employees at that point in time more or less did not have a choice, then really they would take whatever was there to be offered. But as time moves on and as you get more experience in that field, you feel like you deserve a more dignified income. So for that reason, and especially the government also understands that, it institutes this thing known as minimum wage legislation. Yeah? I think even for police officers, I think that is the most common one. That is the one that you get to hear about a lot. Yeah, because that is the amount of compensation that we give a police officer, of course, acts as a deterrent to bribe. So it is something that is something that is of national interest. Yeah. So I just want us to finish on this to look by looking at the objectives, so that we can look at something else on consumer and producer surplus. Yeah. So let's explain the objectives of minimum wage legislation. Objectives of minimum wages. What are some of the objectives? We have just around 4 of them, or I have around 4. You can make sure you can add on more. I cannot claim that these are the only ones that are out there. So you need to make sure that if I give you 4, maybe you leave space for 5 or 6 of them, so that as part of your revision, you can just have a look at them when you are able to access Google and all that. Yeah. So what is the first objective? It is to improve living standards of employees, of workers. To improve living standards of workers. Improve living standards of workers. That is number 1. The second reason to avoid exploitation of workers. To avoid exploitation of workers. To avoid exploitation of workers. That is reason number 2, yeah, to avoid exploitation of workers. The third reason, number 3, to control against industrial disputes. Control against industrial disputes. Control against industrial disputes. Control against industrial disputes. Yeah, of course, it gets to a point where it becomes unreasonable, yeah? Even for employers to hold out for too long. Yeah? So they have to more or less just sit down and listen to what maybe employees have to say. And then the last one is to motivate workers, of course. To motivate workers. To motivate workers. To motivate workers. Motivate workers. And we need to be able to make these individuals who's working for you to look forward to doing the work, yeah? Be able to be more happier in, or to be able to give more of themselves and do better during their course of work, yeah? So that is it as far as minimum wage legislation. Moving on to something else, yeah? Now, let me just write it fast, yeah? The next section focuses on consumer surplus, and producer surplus. Now, you know, if you are engaging in production, yeah, if you are engaging in production, then there is that, if you're saying, let me start with consumer surplus, yeah. If you're saying that you have a certain amount of money that you want to pay for a given commodity, yeah. So let's say that you expect to pay a certain amount as a payment for a given commodity that you want to purchase, yeah. Now, if you're saying, let me use a practical example. If you're saying that you want to buy an egg, for example, yeah, and then this egg, you expected to pay Kenya shillings 15 for it. Kenya shillings, okay, let me be realistic, Kenya shillings 20. You want to pay Kenya shillings 20. But when you go to the store, when you go to the shop, you find that you are charged less than what you expected. Yeah, that is maybe Kenya shillings 12. Yeah, so if you get to pay Kenya shillings 12 for one egg instead of Kenya shillings 20, then that difference, that extra amount, that amount that you're charged less than what you were willing to pay is what is known as the consumer surplus. Yeah, and it normally occurs, yeah, that whenever you have a shortage of a commodity. So I want to just have a diagram for this before I explain it in more detail. So let me just have the diagram first. So of course, because you're talking about consumer and producer surplus, we're going to talk about this diagram here for equilibrium, yeah, whereby you have demand and supply of a commodity. So you have, that is the supply curve, you have the demand curve there, you have the demand against the supply. Then you have these particular points that I want to highlight. So I'll shade one of the areas in black and I'll shade the other in blue. Yeah, this area, upper area here. You see this area here that I've shaded in black. This one is what is known as the consumer surplus. Consumer surplus. So I want us to get to explain in detail. Of course, this is the equilibrium where you have the, this is the price. So you have the equilibrium price PE, equilibrium quantity QE. This is quantity against price. So that is the point known as what? As consumer surplus. That if a consumer is charged less than what one was willing to pay, then the difference between what one was willing to pay and what one actually pays is this thing known as the consumer surplus. And as I've said, it occurs whenever there is a shortage of a commodity in the market. Okay. So I want to start by explaining that. Let's just finish up with the diagram, then we'll get to explain the two. So that is the point that is known as the consumer surplus. Sometimes with the aid of a diagram, explain consumer surplus. You just produce that area that I've shaded in black. It's just that I've combined these two because they normally fall on the same area. They normally fall on the same area. So this area that I'm now shading that is below the consumer surplus, yeah, but it is also below the supply curve, up above the supply curve, but below the point of consumer surplus. You can see this one is blue, this one is black. So this one in blue, this is what I'm calling the producer surplus. So let's just have this diagram. Yeah, let's have the diagram and then we get to explain the two. Let's finish up the black diagram and then I can give you an explanation against consumer surplus. So please, with the aid of a diagram, explain produce consumer surplus. You come up with the black shaded area only, this one here, yeah, this one here. And then with the aid of a diagram, explain producer surplus. You only shade the lower part. However, the remaining bit of the diagram is the same basically. Yeah. So just to put it very simply, yeah, consumer surplus is that gain, yeah, that the consumer gets for doing what? For paying less than what they were expecting to pay. And I want to just explain it like that in a very, very simple way. And then producer surplus, of course, that is the producer benefit. Yeah, you're selling this product at a higher price than what you expected to sell it at. Yeah? So if you're selling it at a higher price than what you were expecting to sell it at, it basically means that you're getting some extra revenue that points to producer surplus. So I just want to explain the two. We look at something else. Yeah, we get to actually start. Actually, it's very nice that we have an hour remaining before we start looking at the final bits of this topic. Hopefully, I hope we can be able to finish up with the remaining time. So let's, I'm assuming we have finished with the diagram. We want to explain consumer surplus first. So I want to explain, we'll finish the diagram. Let's explain consumer surplus. Tasema that consumer surplus is the monetary gain or benefit. Consumer surplus is the monetary gain or benefit. Monetary gain or benefit. The monetary gain or benefit obtained by consumers, obtained by consumers, obtained by consumers because they're able to buy a product, because they're able to buy a product because they're willing to buy a product. Let me repeat again, yeah. Consumer surplus is the monetary gain or benefit obtained by consumers because they're able to buy a product for a price that is less. For a price that is less than what they were expecting to pay. For a price that is less than what they were expecting to pay. Buying a product for a price that is less than what they were willing to buy. That is consumer surplus. Okay, what about producer surplus? Producer surplus. And yeah, so producer surplus, yeah, let's explain producer surplus. Remember that this is the amount, producer surplus is the amount. Producer surplus is the amount that producers get, the amount that producers benefit. Producer surplus is the amount that producers benefit by selling at a higher price. By selling at a higher price. By selling at a higher price than what they were willing to sell. For a higher price than what they were willing to sell. For a higher price than what they were willing to sell. Yeah, so if producers are able to sell a commodity at a higher price than what they were, let me say, expecting to sell, then of course they enjoy something known as producer surplus. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you can just write it in the form of in the form of an LB. And let me just explain something small concerning difference. But just sometimes you need to be able to understand this thing more than just the definition kind of way. Yeah. And I might not have these contents because I'm also trying to make sure I finish this topic. But you know, I cannot have, and then of course I cannot also have the answer to every question I would expect to be asked from that paper. The only thing I can do, especially for you, is to make sure that you understand the concept very well to be able to do more research, slightly more research, and just be able to come up with solutions on some questions that might come up. Yeah, what one of that I'm thinking about. Yeah, what are the differences between consumer surplus and producer surplus? You see, that's a question that can just pop out of the exam. Yeah, and aside from the different side of it, then you need to be able to understand it even better. Because if I I'm to say one of the differences, I would say that in consumer surplus, it is the consumer that benefits, for example. In producer surplus, it is the producer that benefits, yeah? That is just an example, yeah? So I just want to make sure that we note something, yeah? Maybe that can form another basis of difference, yeah? So just as NB, you write there that consumer surplus is experienced during excess supply of a commodity. Consumer surplus. This consumer surplus is experienced at a point of excess supply. Yeah. Because you can see from this black area, anywhere above the equilibrium price, you find that demand is higher than the supply. So consumer surplus is, I mean, the supply is at this point. So supply is more than demand. If supply is more than demand, under excess supply, then prices will basically go down. So consumer surplus is experienced during excess supply, while producer surplus is experienced during excess demand. You know, during excess demand, people are willing to pay at more price. People are willing to buy at a high price. And of course, at a high price, it is more enjoyable for the seller because they're making more revenue. So under excess demand, you get to experience producer surplus. So producer surplus is experienced during excess demand, during points of excess demand. Yeah, I don't know if there's any question on that. As I know, I'm marching on. We are marching on together, making sure we are not leaving anyone behind. The penultimate bit of this topic focuses on production function analysis. Production function analysis. Yeah, how can we analyze production? Yeah, you know, this topic is known as the theory of the farm. So we are trying to analyze activities that take place in a farm, so that at the end of the day, we can be able to perhaps give recommendation on the optimum levels of production. When I talk about optimum levels of production, we're talking about levels of production that aim to lower the cost of production, while at the same time, you are maximizing your revenue, your profit. Yeah. So I want us to get to understand the side of cost first as part of production function, and then we get to see where we can finish that for today. So tumebaki in a very small bit for this topic. I hope I can be allowed with the time to just finish up with this thing, but I think we'll get to see. So I want to start by explaining what production function analysis is first, and then we get to look at some law that will come out of it, okay? So let's explain production function. So it doesn't matter that production function shows the relationship between production function shows the relationship between input and output of a farm. Show the relationship between input and output of a farm. Full stop. So the relationship between input and output. Of course, we have spent the initial bit of this topic trying to understand input, yeah? The four factors of production that constitutes input, yeah? So that at the end of the day, you can be able to combine this input to come up with output that you can make money out of as a revenue, okay? So production function shows the relationship between input and output of a farm. Full stop. Another statement, it shows the maximum amount of output. It shows the maximum amount of output. It shows the maximum amount of output that can be produced. Maximum amount of output that can be produced by a farm. You know, when I'm talking about farm, I hope we are together. It shows the maximum output that can be produced by a farm given a set of inputs, given a set of inputs, given a set of inputs, given a set of inputs within the existing state of technology. Within the existing state of technology. So I've said that production function, let me start from the second point. It shows the maximum amount of output that can be produced by a farm given a set of input within the existing state of technology. Okay. We'll stop. Another point, the level of output will change whenever factors of production are changed. The level of output will change whenever the factors of production are changed. So that is definitely true, yeah. If you're able to add, if you're able to multiply your factors of production, definitely your output level will change, yeah. You can be able to obtain more raw materials, you can be able to have more machinery, you can use more labor to come up with more output, yeah. So when you change the output level, when you change factors of production, output level will change as well, okay. Another important statement to tutasema hapo that the relationship between input and output, the relationship between input and output depends on the time frame, depends on the time period. Let me say time period. The relationship between input and output depends on time period, i.e. short run and long run periods. The relationship between input and output depends on the time period, i.e. short run and long run period. Short run and long run period. So I think with this one we have understood this concept. I'll just erase. So what does it mean for us to analyze costs within the short term? You know, there is something important that you need to understand. When you talk about short term, I generally classify short term as something maybe 3 years or less. Yeah. So if you're talking about short term, so short run period, let's try and analyze the short run period. Short run period. You know, if you're talking about you as a producer, asking yourself what is it that you want to change, you can only change a few things. So there are given factors of production that are variable, while some of them are fixed as well. Yeah? So kuna factors and you cannot change them within the short run, but we have some others that you can change within the short run. So I want to be able to explain that with a statement because it leads up to another law that is very, very important that needs to be understood whenever you're trying to understand production. So let's explain something here, short run period. Short run period, someone that this refers to the time period. This refers to the time period. This refers to the time period over which at least one factor of production. This refers to the time period over which at least one factor of production is variable. At least one factor of production is variable. At least one factor of production is variable, while the rest are fixed. While the rest are fixed. So one factor of production is variable, but you have to remember that the others will be fixed, okay? Yeah, this is only just one point of view, yeah? So let me just start the statement from the top and then you can pick it up from somewhere. That this refers to the time period over which at least one factor of production is variable and the rest are fixed, or one factor is fixed, while the other factors are variable. One factor is fixed while the other are variable. One factor is fixed while the other are variable. So one factor is fixed while the other is, the other factors of production are basically variable, okay? Now another important statement, you write this statement on its own, it doesn't matter that we experience diminishing returns. We experience we normally experience diminishing returns. We normally experience diminishing returns. I'll get to explain this. Yeah. So after we've said that we get to experience diminishing returns, we now look at that law. It's known as the law of diminishing returns. But it also has another name, yeah? Stroke the law of variable proportions. The law of variable proportions. So it is either known as the law of diminishing return or the law of variable proportion. What does this law say? As you are, when you have a given level of resources, of course, for you to be able to desire to have more revenue, then you need to have more output. But for you to have more output, you need more input, yeah? But for you to say that you're adding more and more input while you have one factor of production that maybe is fixed, then you have a law that can come out of that, and I want to explain it before we illustrate it in a diagram. This thing we have to understand how we illustrate it in diagram form. It is a very important concept. Let's write what the law says. To remember that the law states that we're explaining this, yeah. The law states that as more and more units, as more and more units of a variable factor as more and more units of a variable factor are added to a fixed factor. E.g. labor. Let me say this law states that as more and more units of a variable factor, e.g. labor, so labor we are taking as the example of the variable factor, yeah? So as more and more units of a variable factor, e.g. labor, are added to a fixed factor, comma, total output increases, inaongezeka. Total output increases, but at a decreasing rate. Yeah? Total output increases, but at a decreasing rate. Total output increases, but at a decreasing rate. Yeah. So basically, it's like this law says that it doesn't mean that when you produce the maximum number that you can produce, you're going to get greater benefit. No, you need to be able to compare some various factors for you to say that you are at an optimum level. Yeah. So as more and more units of a variable factor, e.g. labor, are added to a fixed factor, total output increases, but at a decreasing rate, full stop. These can be, another statement, this can be illustrated as follows. So we have some illustration here, but all of this is part of production function analysis, yeah? So we are now understanding production function more and more, yeah? So I want us to maybe define some diagrams, some terms that we're going to express as diagrams in a graph, yeah? The first term that I want us to explain is total product. So let's start by explaining what total product is first. Total product, TP. And this is basically the total output, by the way. Yeah. So total product or total output, total product. What is total product? So TP, usually abbreviated as TP. This is the total output. This is the total output resulting from. This is the total output resulting from the effort. Of factors of production. Resulting from the effort of the factors of production combined at any one time. Let me repeat. Total product This is the total output resulting from the effort of all factors of production combined at any one time. At any one time. And of course, this is something that we have talked about from the beginning of this topic, yeah? That when you combine the factors of production, you engage in production, you will come up with a commodity that you aim to sell, be able to earn revenue. But in addition to this, you know, for part of analysis, we need to be able to understand not only total product, but also the second term, average product, AP, average product. AP. What is AP? Want to explain average product? What is average product? Remember that this is total product. This is total product per unit. This is total product per unit of a variable factor. This is total product per unit of a variable factor. Total product per unit of variable factor, yeah? And just to be able to enable you understand the formula, so this is total product per unit of a variable factor. So when you're talking about it in terms of formula, then we say that average product equals what we had first. So technical formula, total product over the units of variable factor. So basically, what am I saying there? Remember what you're doing here. We're trying to understand this law of diminishing returns, yeah? And for us to understand that, we need to be able to understand some terms, yeah? So the second term that you're trying to understand is average product. That is total product per unit of variable factor, meaning that AP is equals to TP over Q. AP equals TP over Q. Now, if you're talking about change, you know, you have to understand another thing that leads to the third term to define. That when you change the units, if you change the units of a variable factor, total product will change. Yeah. When you change it by 1 unit, total product will change by a particular amount. So when you're trying to analyze change in total product due to change in quantity, then you're trying to understand the third term that is known as marginal product, MP. So I want to explain marginal product as a third concept, MP. What is marginal product? Marginal product. So basically, in a very simple way, it's like this, yeah? You know, when you add more units, when you add an extra unit of a variable factor, when you add your capital, your labor, your land, etc., you're going to get extra product. So when you're trying to analyze the extra product that you will gain by adding an extra unit of variable factor, then what you're trying to analyze is marginal product. Let me explain that. Marginal product, that this is the extra product received. Yes, this is the extra product received. This is the extra product received by adding an extra unit of variable factor. By adding an extra unit of variable factor. By adding an extra unit of a variable factor. So this is the extra product received here from adding an extra unit of a variable. Let me just give the formula for that, yeah? So we're not talking about marginal product. So the formula for marginal product equals change in total product, change in total product over change in the unit of the variable factor, change in total product over change in variable factor. So MP is equals to delta. This is change, yeah. Delta, this triangle is change, yeah. Delta TP, change in total product over change in Q. Change in TP over change in Q. And that is very important for us to be able to analyze this law, yeah, what it tells us, yeah. But before we get to illustrate it in the form of a diagram, I want us to be able to understand it very logically, yeah. For some of these diagrams, it is better for me to be able to show you where it is coming from, and then we produce the diagram. Ultimately, we get to see where we can move from there. So after all of this, I want us to look at the assumptions of this law. Assumptions of the law of variable proportions. Remember, it is the law of diminishing returns at the end of the day. It is the same thing. What are some of the assumptions? Because you know that for most of the laws that we have, yeah, we must assume a few things, which might not necessarily be true, but they're very important for us to just analyze this and compare it with the other various forms of concepts that we have. So what are the assumptions of the law of variable proportions? I want us to look at this. Let's explain some of the assumptions. Assumption number one, factors of production are assumed to be used. Factors of production are assumed to be used in different proportions. Factors of production are assumed to be used in different proportions. That is the first assumption. Now, another second very important assumption number two, technology is assumed to be constant. Technology is assumed to be constant. Technology is assumed to be constant. And technology is not changing now. Technology is assumed to be constant. Assumption number three. The units of the variable factor. The units of the variable factor. The units of the variable factor. The units of the variable factor are assumed to be homogeneous. The units of the variable factor are assumed to be homogeneous. The units of the variable factor are assumed to be homogeneous. And then the last assumption number four, of course, homogeneous means identical, yeah? So there is not much difference, yeah, with these units, common units of labor. We are basically assuming that each output that one person can produce is the same as the output of another. But of course, depending on certain factors, this might not be necessarily true. The last assumption number four, yeah, remember that this law assumes that one factor of production is variable. This law assumes one factor of production is variable, while the rest are fixed. One factor of production is variable, while the rest are fixed. One factor of production is variable, while the rest are fixed. Definitely true. Yeah. So for this one, and remember what we're doing here, we are analyzing cost we're analyzing production generally within the short run. Yeah. So within the short run, we're saying that one factor of production is variable while the rest are fixed. Yeah. And the only one that is variable for this particular problem is labor. Yeah. So I want us to get to the point where we get to understand how this concept comes along. And we are going to use a diagram. They want us to use a table that will show us how that diagram looks like. So just a minute. So I wanted more space because I want to use a a table first. I want us to use a table. I want us to produce a table very quickly. And then using this table, of course, we'll come up with some curves. Yeah, a curve. We actually come up with these three curves. Yeah, well, how do the three curves relate to each other whenever we are talking about production? Yeah, in the short run. Remember, this is in the short run. So we have an illustration here. Illustration there. I want us to have a table starting with the first column being units of labor. So that's our units of labor. I hope this is clear. Units of labor. This is Q. Remember, this is what we are assuming to be the variable factor. Yeah. And then we have land there in acres, land in acres. Yeah. What is the land size? Let me describe it better. Land size in acres. That will be a fixed factor because we are assuming that you're producing in one particular point and this land will not change. If you're using a particular size of land to be able to engage in production, then this one we're just taking it to be a constant. Yeah. So that from this we will get the three. What is total product? TP. What is total product? And then what is average product? AP. Average product AP. So these three last columns are what will give us the three curves. Yeah. The last one is the marginal product, MP. MP. So make sure you have those. Those are 5 columns. Yeah. Yes. So I'm trying to get a point whereby I can come up with these 3, and then I don't know whether this space will fit, but we'll get to see. So the units of labor are changing by one unit across the road, yeah. So from one unit of labor up to 10, yeah. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Land size, I've told you this will be a constant. This one will not change at any level of production. 1, 1. We're talking about maybe production within 1 acre of land. Total product. This is where we'll come up with some figures. So if you're saying that you have sorry. There is one figure that I've missed. I don't know why I keep missing this figure whenever I do this thing. Yeah. Now land in acres, that is okay. We have to also describe the size of production or total product whenever we have 0 units of labor. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and of course 10. So that at each level of production, yeah, the land will not change. So this is the variable factor, this is the fixed factor. Total product, at 0 units of labor, you have 0 total product. Let me just write the others following each other. So as you increase units of labor, total product, of course, will increase, yeah, as the law is suggesting. So I remember what the formulas were. Remember the formulas. Remember, for us to get AP, average product, AP is equals to the respective total product over the respective quantity. So like at this first level, average product, this divided by this. Anything divided by 0 is infinity. So at that level of production, average product is infinite. But if you do this divided by this, 15 divided by 1, of course, you get 15 as average product when you have 1 unit of labor. 35 divided by 2, 17.5. 60 divided by 3, 20. 90 divided by 4, that's 22.5. 120 over 5, that's 24. 144 divided by 6, 140, I mean 24 again, that's 24 as well. 158 over 7, 158 over 7, I'm seeing 22.57. So remember what we're doing here. We are dividing total product by quantity. So by the respective quantity. Yeah? And this one, 160 divided by, so 150, let me confirm, first of all. Where my calculators are. Confirm whether that value is okay, that 22 point something. It's okay. So 158 divided by 7. Yeah, I'm getting 22.57. 160 divided by 8, that is 20. That becomes 20. 153 divided by 9, that's 17. Then finally 140 divided by 10 becomes 14. So you can see there is a specific property that is coming out from this, and I would like to just point to that with a diagram that will follow this. Yeah. So the last column that I want us to look at is marginal product. Yeah, marginal product. So for the first one, really, for you to get marginal product, because labor, this is the Q, because labor is changing at every point by 1, whatever we will get as change in total product, we're just dividing it by 1. Yeah, like for this one, 0. If this one, you don't have 1 to compare it with the previous one. But if we now look at this second point, where you now have 1 unit of labor, yeah, then at this level, where you have 1 unit of labor, meaning that 15 is the total product, then for me to get marginal product, it is change in total product over change in Q. So from what I can see here, change in total product is 15 minus 0 divided by 1 minus 0. That is 15 over 1, and that is 15. So at this 1 unit of labor, we have 15 as our marginal product. Yeah? And remember, it is change in total product. So from 15 to 35, what is the change in total product? 35 minus 15, 20. You can see for the first one, 15 minus 0, 15. For the second one, 35 minus 15, 20. 60 minus 35, 25. 60 minus 35, 25. 90 minus 60, 30. Now, so total product is changing at as we continue, as we keep on adding more and more units of labor. Okay. From 90 to 120, I can see we also have 30. So from 60 to 90 it was 30, 90 to 120, it is also 30 to 120 minus that. Yeah? 144 minus 120, 24. 24. 158 minus 144, 14. Okay. 160 minus 158, there is a pattern that is coming up. We need to see that as we are adding more and more units of labor, of course, marginal product, this is the most important one for us to understand because it shows change in this. So because it is adding and adding more, it will get to a point whereby it can be described as the maximum. This point of 30, this is the maximum marginal product you're getting. But of course, after the maximum, it starts to fall again. Yeah, up to the point whereby it will actually become negative because 160 minus 158, that is positive 2, but 153 minus 160 is negative 7. Then 140 minus 153, negative 13. So you see, it actually gets to a point whereby this production, marginal product that you are getting becomes negative. Yeah, you are losing more because you are adding too much input. Yeah, you are adding too much input compared to what they can produce as output. So you start getting negative returns. Okay, I think you are done with the first column there. I don't know if there's any question. I want to use this remaining space now to come up with the diagram that will resolve from this. a sketch, yeah, if you will. Yes, so I know the other remaining bits. These are the remaining bits that I've covered here, you have already written. So I want us to use this diagram to come up with the curve for total product, for average product, and marginal product, which basically tries to show this behavior in the form of a curve, okay? So what I will do, first of all, I will have my X and Y axis. I have my X, Y axis there. So make sure, like me, you're using your straight lines. Now, what is happening first, if you notice for total product, it is first of all starting from a point of 0, steadily increasing until it gets to a maximum, and then it starts to fall again. This is how it looks like. Let me just come up with that. So it starts from the beginning, gets to a maximum, and then starts to fall again. Yes, that can be my total product anyway. Remember, this is just a sketch, TP. Let me, because I'm going to have average product and marginal product below them, I need more space for those two. So what happens is that it first of all starts with production very high, and then it gets to a point whereby it can be described as a maximum before it starts to fall off again. That is TP. Now, AP has more or less the same behavior. Yeah, it has more or less the same behavior, but at a lower level. So let me just try and come up with AP as well. Yes, AP can take that form. AP is something like that. That generally, where you have the maximum points of total product, you also more or less have the highest levels of average product. Yes, yes, somewhere around this level here. That is average product. Marginal product is the one that shows very interesting behavior. Now, marginal product, I want to make sure these things are. So marginal product is first of all in the middle. Yeah. But this is how these things relate. Yeah. So I can take that to be my curve for average product, that is AP. Just see what I'm doing, and then you'll be able to see and be able to come up with the diagram. Now, what I usually do, because I want to describe what the maximum point is first, I will describe it with dotted lines, because this is also very important for us to understand the next bit. Yeah. Unaulizwa with using the law of these variable proportions, explain the 3 stages of production. Yeah. So well, that is what we have there. Yeah, that will just split our work into 3 stages, and I'll show you why. But for marginal product, it works like this. No, you. Yeah. No, not at that point. Make sure this thing is very, very accurate. So we have those. I want to come up with now my marginal product. My marginal product will cut at this point here. You know, I want to make this thing a bit wider as well. I want to clearly distinguish the 3 stages for anyone who has been following through. So marginal product, it starts from the middle, of course, it gets to a point, but it cuts off at that particular point. Yes. You see that, yeah? It cuts this point at this dotted line, and then it not only does that, but it continues up to this point here. Yes, up to a negative. Remember, marginal product, we have a negative, yeah? That is how the curve for MP looks like. Yes. So that is the 3 diagrams. I wanted to try and come up with those 3, and then we get to explain the 3 stages of production using this diagram. I also want to make sure it looks as genuine as possible. Yes. So something like that. So we have total product, we have average product, and we have marginal product. Remember, this is output, the y-axis is output against the units of the variable factor. So units of amount of variable factor. Amount of variable factor. Amount of variable factor Q. Good example is labor. So from all of these, you can see three things are coming up. Yeah. What I basically wanted to explain is the three stages of production. Yeah. So we have stage one here. We have stage one there. We have stage two here. We have stage three. So we have three. Sometimes you're asked with the aid of a diagram, explain the three stages of production. So this one is law of variable proportion and the stages of production. Law of variable proportion and the stages of production. Law of variable proportion and stages of production. Law of variable proportion and stages of production. So basically, what we're saying is that this law of variable proportion can be proven with two scenarios, with a schedule here and with a diagram that we have just produced there. So I want to explain the three stages of production using that particular diagram. So I hope you can see clearly. These are perpendicular, they're straight lines. So just draw them neatly, and then you can come up with, we get to explain the three stages probably as we start drawing. So I'll start by explaining, after the done with the diagram, I'll start by explaining stage one. So stage one, hyphen, colon, increasing returns. Because you can see that as we are, so after the diagram, we'll start with stage one. Because as you can see from stage one, these two, generally, average product and total, especially total product, are increasing, yeah, until the point which can be described as the maximum, yeah. So I hope you can notice some of these things here, like there is an intersection point at where stage two is beginning, and then we also have an intersection here where at the end of stage two, the marginal product curve is at 0. After you're done with the diagram, I want to start by explaining stage one, that is known as the stage of increasing returns. Stage one, increasing returns. Hopefully, you can finish by having understood the three stages of production. And for sure that when we meet next time, whatever will be remaining will just be for us to finish for these. So yeah, as I was saying, I want to start by explaining the three stages, starting with stage number one, that is known as the stage of increasing returns. Increasing returns, here we go. So basically, this stage that I have my hand over now, yeah, that is the stage of increasing returns. Yeah, stage two, of course, is between these two dotted lines there. So we want to start by explaining stage one. Stage one. Utasema that as the units of the variable factors, we're explaining stage one, increasing returns. Yeah. So I'm assuming we are finished with the diagram, by the way. Yeah? I'm hoping, I'm safely assuming that we are done with the diagram. So you're going to say that as the units of the variable factor, e.g. labor, are increased, as the units of the variable factor, e.g. labor, are increased on a fixed factor, as the units of the variable factor, e.g. labor, are increased on a fixed factor, are increased on a fixed factor, comma, TP, yeah, total product, TP, AP, and MP will be generally increasing. Itakuwa inaongezeka. TP, AP, and MP, total product, average product, and marginal product will generally be increasing. Will generally be increasing. That is stage number one. Yeah. So stage number one, I finished by saying that as the units of labor are increased, or as the units of the variable factor, e.g. labor, are increased on a fixed factor, comma, initially, total product, average product, and marginal product will increase. All of them will generally increase. What about stage two now? Stage two is known as the stage of constant returns. Constant returns. I want to explain that next. Constant returns. Constant returns. Constant returns does mean that at this stage, total product, total product is at maximum. At this stage, TP is at maximum. You can see it here. That is stage two. At this stage, TP is at maximum, comma, AP, average product, in a cutter, cuts, AP cuts, AP cuts, MP, average product cuts marginal product, average product cuts marginal product, and then marginal product begins to fall. And then marginal product begins to fall. So stage two means that at this stage, TP is at maximum, average product cuts marginal product, the marginal product begins to fall. Still on that stage two, another statement you'd say that when TP is at maximum, when total product is at maximum, yeah, MP will be zero, marginal product will be zero. Yeah. When total product is at maximum, marginal product will be at zero. When TP is at maximum, MP will be at zero. That is stage number two, stage of constant returns. What about the last stage now? We have the last stage that you can see that any point that is beyond stage two is basically a stage whereby all of them are actually falling. And in fact, marginal product is at negative. Yeah? And now this negative, anything beyond here, this is now where you have these values of MP being negative. Yeah? So that stage is basically known as the stage of decreasing returns. They want to explain that as the last stage, decreasing returns. The stage of decreasing returns. So let's explain the last stage, that is the stage of decreasing returns. You'll say that as the units of labor are increased further, as the units of labor are increased further, TP, as the units of labor are increased further, comma, TP, total product, AP, and MP will all be falling. TP, AP, and MP will all be falling. Will all be falling. All of them are actually falling. Full stop. At this stage, so after some of that, all the three are falling to some of that. At this stage, marginal product is negative. MP is negative. At this stage, MP is negative, i.e., negative returns are experienced. At this stage, marginal returns are negative, i.e., negative returns are experienced. Negative returns are experienced. Yeah, so at this stage, you are experiencing negative returns. Yeah? So what you have as -7, -13 is manifested by this point that is below the output level. Yeah, I don't know, maybe just to be able to write it as a matter of fact, before we get to explain, yeah, I want someone to tell us as NB there. If you were to be a producer and then you are facing such kind of production scenario, yeah, what stage do you think generally is the best for producer to be at? What is the best stage of production? Anyone? Stage gani is the best stage for production between the three?
Second stage.
Yes, thanks, yeah. It is stage 2. Yes, stage 2, yeah, or the second stage, because you are producing at maximum level and in a constant way, yeah. So just express that as the NB there. Some of that, the best stage of production for a farm. The best stage of production for a farm will be at stage 2. Will be at stage 2. Will be at stage 2, where the farm experiences, stage 2, where the farm experiences constant returns. The farm experiences constant returns, but at maximum level. The farm experiences constant returns, but at maximum level. So we're basically saying that the best stage of production is at stage 2, this stage here, where you're producing maximum or constant returns, but at as maximum level as you can, or as you possibly can. Yeah? Of course, considering the level of resources that you have. Okay, so that is it in as far as that is concerned. I want to basically start concluding. There's just one more thing I want us to look at before we call it a day, because when we start meeting, when we'll meet next time, we'll have a look at now a totally different concept, yeah, but something that is more or less related to what we covered, yeah. Remember what we talked about when we talked about consumer behavior in the previous topic, yeah, whereby we were looking at this thing known as indifference curve, yeah. Now, when we had indifference curve, we are going basically to have a diagram or a curve that is similar in terms of appearance at least, but in terms of operation, it is slightly different. Yeah. When we meet next time, we're going to understand the concept of something known as isoquants. Yeah. What is an isoquant? What is an isoquant curve? And then once we get to have an isoquant, of course, we have to get a line known as an isopost line, so that with the interaction of those two, we can get to understand the equilibrium level of production for a producer. Yeah? That is very important for a producer to be able to consider. Yeah? You're basically telling yourself that you cannot produce just any number of units you want to produce, but you have to consider a few things. You have to consider the mix of resources that you have, yeah, the combination, and how can you be able to achieve optimality out of that combination. Otherwise, I don't know, yeah, maybe, yes, I want us to look at the last bit here. Yes, the last bit. I want us to focus on the last bit. I want us to look at applications, yeah, of the law of variable proportion. Yes, the last bit for today is going to cover on the applications of the law of variable proportion. So as much as I've talked about it so much, you might not have a good idea as to where it is being used. So where do we use the law of variable proportions? Applications. Applications of the law of variable proportions. Yeah, as a producer, these are things that need to be very handy for you, because you cannot, especially with the times that we are in, you cannot just engage in production for the sake of it. You have to consider a few things. You have to consider the resources available, and we'll actually see to some extent why it is very crucial. Sometimes, even if you're producing at negative returns, it is sometimes beneficial to you for you. If you're producing and then you're making losses, for example, you're not making any revenue, you're going to ask yourself a question. Are you going to continue production, or are you going to end and close up shop altogether? Sometimes you might, and of course, it might make sense to close up shop because you're not making any money. But we have to understand that in some cases, it is actually better for you to continue your production, even if you are producing at a given loss. That one we get to understand. But let's just finish by looking at some of the applications of the law of variable proportion. So the first application area, Roman 1, it helps producers analyze. Number 1, it helps producers analyze the level of underutilization. Helps producers analyze the level of underutilization. The level of underutilization of fixed factors. The level of underutilization of fixed factors. That is the first application area. Now, since you are able to understand how resources are underutilized, it would also be very interesting for you as a producer to try and understand what is the optimum level of production. Yeah. So the second application area, that is the first one. The second application area is that it is used in determining. It is used in determining optimum production. Used in determining optimum production. Used in determining optimum production. That is number 2, helps in determining optimum production. Yeah. The third application area, number 3, Roman 3, it helps producers understand. It helps producers understand. Helps producers understand the limits. Helps producers understand the limits of a fixed factor of production. Helps producers understand the limits of a fixed factor of production. That is number 3, I believe. Yeah. Helps producers understand the limits of a fixed factor of production. And the fourth application area, the fourth one, number 4, it helps in identifying. It helps in identifying the marginal product of a factor. Helps in identifying Roman 4, marginal product of a factor. I'll explain this. I want to explain this better. Marginal product of a factor, i.e., the marginal product of a factor, i.e., helps producers to understand the marginal product of a factor, i.e., the extra output obtained. The extra output obtained by adding. The extra output obtained by adding one or more extra units. Yes. the extra output obtained by adding one or more extra units. One or more extra units of a factor of production. The extra output obtained by adding one or more extra units of a factor of production. Remember, this is all that this topic is about. Yeah? We're trying to say that if you add more units of labor, for example, you're going to get more production, right? But at what point will it become a negative? Will it bring a negative net effect? Yeah, because if you're able to, if you add more and more and more labor, whenever, and you're not earning a lot of revenue, your revenue is not changing compared to the labor, then definitely you will experience the stage that you're calling the stage of decreasing or negative returns. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I think I'd like to stop there for today, because I'm pretty confident that whatever is there remaining, we will be able to finish it. I think we agreed that we're going to meet on Friday. I will confirm with the coordinator for me to know whether we can have that lesson on Friday. Then we just pick up from there. But if not, of course, we have Saturday, then we'll have to continue from Saturday. We finish up with this topic, and then we start having a look at market structures, as well as we finish up with microeconomics, and then we start looking at macro side of this thing known as